Welcome to Revenge with Nora. I saved in secret for 6 years to buy my first home. My sister found out through someone we both trusted. By the time I pulled into the driveway with my keys, her car was already parked there. And when I opened the door, I understood exactly what she'd done. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31 years old. And if you think this story ends with me walking away quietly, you don't know me yet. The morning I got the call from my loan officer, I was standing in the break room at the hospital, still wearing my scrubs from a 12-hour overnight shift. My coffee had gone cold. My feet ached from the floor. And when she said the words, "Congratulations, Claire, you're clear to close," I pressed my back against the wall and just breathed for a long moment, because that sentence was 6 years in the making. 6 years of double shifts. 6 years of skipping vacations, driving a car with a cracked dashboard, buying groceries on Sunday evenings when the markdown stickers went up. 6 years of watching my colleagues go out for drinks after work, while I transferred every spare dollar into an account I never mentioned to anyone. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not my parents, and especially not my sister. Her name is Diana. She's 4 years older than me, and she has never once in her adult life paid for something she could convince someone else to cover. When our parents downsized 5 years ago, Diana somehow ended up with their old furniture, their spare car, and 6 months of rent-free living in their guest room while she figured things out. When she got married, our parents paid for the wedding. When her husband lost his job 2 years ago, it was our parents again who quietly covered their mortgage while they got back on their feet. She never paid them back. Not a single dollar. And nobody in our family ever said a word about it, because Diana had a way of making every conversation about her feelings instead of her debts. I had watched that pattern my entire life. So when I started saving, I told no one. Not because I was ashamed, because I already knew what would happen the moment someone found out. There would be a conversation, a soft suggestion, a reminder that family helps family. And somehow, by the end of it, a portion of what I had earned with my own exhausted hands would find its way into my sister's life. So I kept quiet. I closed on a 2-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor of a building on Maple Creek Road, 12 minutes from the hospital, with a small balcony that looked out over a courtyard full of oak trees. The closing date was a Thursday. I took the afternoon off work. I signed every document with a hand that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what I was finally holding. The keys were cold in my palm. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the title company for 10 minutes, just holding them. I didn't tell a soul. The mistake was a mutual friend. Her name was Diana, and I had both known since high school, someone I thought I could trust with a brief, excited text. I had run into her at the coffee shop near the title office, still flushed with adrenaline, and I had let it slip. I just closed on a place, just those 5 words. I asked her to keep it to herself for a few weeks while I got settled. She agreed. She told Diana within 48 hours. I didn't know that yet on the Friday evening when I drove to Maple Creek Road for the first time as the legal owner, a bag of cleaning supplies on the passenger seat, and a playlist I'd made months ago called Someday playing through the speakers. I pulled into the parking garage, found spot 3C with my name on the lease placard, and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was quiet. I walked to unit 304. I put the key in the lock. The door opened to voices. My sister's voice, her husband's, and the sound of their 2 kids running across my hardwood floors. I stood in the doorway and didn't move for several seconds. Diana was in my kitchen, opening cabinet doors one by one, peering inside like she was inspecting inventory. Her husband Marcus was in the living room with his phone out, walking the perimeter, and I realized with a cold lurch in my chest that he was filming. Their daughter, who was 7, was running down the short hallway toward the bedroom. Their son was pressing his hands against my balcony glass door, leaving prints on the clean surface. Diana turned and saw me. She didn't flinch. She smiled. "There she is," she said, like she'd been waiting for me, like this was her home and I was the guest. Something locked into place in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something colder and more precise than anger. "How did you get in?" I asked. My voice came out very steady. She held up a key. I stared at it. It was a copy I could tell by the slightly brighter finish, the edges still crisp from cutting, which meant she hadn't broken in through a window or picked a lock. She had gotten a copy made. And to do that, she would have needed access to my original key, even briefly. Later, I would piece it together. Jess hadn't just told Diana I'd bought the place, she had told her the address. And Diana had driven past the building 2 days earlier, introduced herself to the building manager as my sister, explained that she was helping me move in, and asked if maintenance could let her in to drop off a housewarming gift. The manager, who had no reason not to believe her, had let her in with a master key while she arranged flowers on the counter. What he didn't know was that she'd brought a blank key and a small handheld duplicator she'd ordered online. Diana was not spontaneous. She was calculated. "I came to help you set up," she said now. Spreading her hands like this was obvious. "You should be grateful. Marcus measured the living room. We think a sectional would fit along the south wall. We were going to surprise you." "I want you to leave," I said. The smile didn't move. "Claire, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking you to leave my home." Marcus lowered his phone, though I wasn't certain he'd stopped recording. "We drove 40 minutes to be here," he said. "Diana just wanted to celebrate with you." "Leave," I said again. "And I need that key." Diana set it on my kitchen counter without handing it to me, a deliberate, small act of defiance, and called the kids in from the hallway. They left without much argument. Marcus went last, pausing at the door to give me a look that was meant to communicate disappointment and landed somewhere closer to contempt. Diana stopped in the doorway. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this," she said quietly. "You bought a 2-bedroom, Claire. You live alone. You know what Marcus and I have been dealing with. You know the kids are sharing a room. And you didn't even think to talk to us." I looked at her for a long moment. "Good night, Diana," I said. I closed the door, locked it, and stood with my back against it in the silence of my own home, which no longer felt entirely mine, because her presence was still hanging in the air like smoke. I called a locksmith at 7 the next morning. By 9, the locks were changed. By noon, my phone had 12 messages. My mother called first. Her voice was the one she used when she wanted me to feel guilty, before she'd even made her point soft, careful, slightly wounded. "Your sister told us about last night. We think you overreacted. She was just trying to help. You know things have been hard for them." My father's message was shorter. "Call me." Diana sent a text at 10:15 that was so long it came through in 3 separate bubbles. The core of it was this. I had purchased a 2-bedroom property that she knew, for a fact, cost significantly more than what I earned as a nurse, unless I had been hiding money from the family. She wanted to know where the down payment came from. She suggested that if I had somehow come into money, an inheritance, a settlement, anything the family had a right to know. She also mentioned, in the 3rd bubble, that she had spoken to a family friend who happened to be a paralegal, and that there were legal avenues worth exploring when it came to family finances and undisclosed assets. I read that message 3 times. Then I opened my laptop. I had kept every document from the purchase process in a single folder. The bank statements showing 6 years of systematic deposits, the payroll records from the hospital, the gift letter I'd signed confirming no portion of the down payment came from external sources, the mortgage application, the closing disclosure, the deed. Every dollar was traceable. Every dollar was mine. I also opened a new folder and moved Diana's text messages into it. Then I downloaded the footage from the small security camera I'd installed the previous day, a decision I'd made almost on instinct, some part of me that had spent a lifetime with Diana already knowing, even before I had evidence, that instinct was usually right. The footage showed Diana letting herself in with the copied key. It showed Marcus filming. It showed their daughter disappearing into my bedroom. It showed Diana opening every cabinet in my kitchen. I saved it all. My mother called again at 2 in the afternoon. This time I picked up. She didn't waste time. "We've been talking, and we think the fair thing would be for you to give Diana and Marcus the 2nd bedroom, a rental arrangement. It would help them out, and you wouldn't even have to use that room." I sat with that for a moment. "Mom," I said, "Diana and Marcus broke into my home. They didn't break in. She had a key made without my permission and entered without my knowledge. That's breaking and entering." Silence. You're being very black and white about this, my mother said. I'm being accurate, I said. I'm also going to be accurate about something else. I saved for 6 years for this. Every dollar in my down payment came from my own work. No one helped me. No one offered to help me. And now that I have something, the suggestion is that I share it with the person who has spent her entire adult life taking from this family without ever once giving anything back. My mother made a sound that was somewhere between hurt and indignation. That's not fair to your sister. It's the truth, I said, and I'd like everyone to think carefully before we continue this conversation, because I have documentation of everything, the purchase, the savings, and what happened in my home last night. I ended the call. That evening, I sat on my balcony and watched the light leave the oak trees in the courtyard below. I wasn't sad. I want to be clear about that, because people sometimes assume that standing firm against your family must feel like grief. It didn't. It felt like setting down something very heavy I hadn't realized I was still carrying. 3 days later, Diana made her next move. She posted on Facebook. It was subtle enough that someone who didn't know our history might have scrolled past it, a photo of her kids sitting on a deflating air mattress in their apartment, a caption that read, "Some people get to choose comfort. Others just keep showing up for their family no matter what." Within 6 hours, it had 47 comments. Several of our cousins. Our aunt on our mother's side. Old family friends who knew Diana as warm, generous Diana, who brought casseroles to potlucks and remembered every birthday. None of them knew what I knew. None of them knew about the copied key, or the filmed walkthrough, or the text message suggesting she'd found a paralegal. I saved every screenshot. Then I called a real estate attorney. Her name was Patricia Hollins, and she had an office downtown that smelled like old paper and black coffee. I brought my folder. She went through it page by page, asked me several precise questions, and leaned back in her chair. "You have nothing to worry about legally," she said. "The property is yours, unambiguously. What your sister did, entering without permission using a key she obtained through deception, is criminal trespass at minimum. You could file charges." "I want to be prepared," I said. She mentioned a paralegal. She mentioned legal avenues. Patricia set down the deed. There are no legal avenues. Not a single one. Unless she can demonstrate she contributed financially to the purchase, which she cannot. Because she didn't, she has no claim. What she's doing is bluffing. Hoping you'll be scared enough to offer her something voluntarily. I drove home with that sitting in my chest like a warm stone. The following Tuesday, Diana called and asked to meet for coffee. "Neutral ground," she said, "just to talk." I agreed. And I brought my phone, already recording, in my jacket pocket. She arrived at the cafe looking composed and deliberate. She ordered tea, wrapped her hands around the mug, and looked at me with an expression that was performing sadness while her eyes did something entirely different. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, "and I realize this situation has gotten out of hand. I don't want to fight with you." "I don't want to fight either," I said. "Good," she exhaled. "So here's what I'm thinking. You give us the second bedroom. We'll pay rent something reasonable, something fair to both of us. The kids get space. We get breathing room. And you and I go back to being sisters instead of whatever this is." I looked at her for a moment. "I'm going to say something," I said, "and I want you to hear it clearly. I worked 6 years for that home. I didn't tell anyone because I knew exactly what would happen, and I was right. You entered without my permission. You filmed the interior. You threatened me with legal action you knew you couldn't follow through on, and you posted about me on social media to turn our family against me." Her expression tightened. "I'm not renting you a room, Diana. I'm not giving you a room. I'm not signing anything, sharing anything, or negotiating anything. What I am going to do is the following." I set my phone on the table, face up, so she could see the recording in progress. "I'm going to document every conversation we have from now on, and if you ever access my property without permission again, I will file criminal charges. Not because I want to ruin you. Because I need you to understand that the years of taking without consequence are over." Her face went through several things very quickly. "You're recording me," she said. "Consent laws in this state only require one party to consent," I said. "That's me." She pushed back her chair and stood up. "You've changed." No, I said. I've just stopped pretending. She left without her tea. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched the family campaign unfold. My aunt called to tell me Diana was devastated. My mother stopped asking me to reconsider and started simply not speaking to me, which, in its own way, was a relief. A cousin I'd always liked sent me a message saying he didn't understand why I was doing this to the family, and I sent him back, without anger, the full sequence of events in writing. Attached to the photo, Diana had posted online. He didn't respond immediately, but 2 days later, he sent one line. That's not what she told us happened. Doubt is slow. But once it starts, it doesn't stop. Meanwhile, I was building something. I had a contractor come in and repaint the second bedroom a deep, calm green. I bought a desk and a small couch and set it up as a home office, somewhere I could sit after a 12-hour shift and decompress. I hung photographs on the hallway wall, places I'd been, people I loved, moments that were entirely mine. I bought a plant for the balcony that I named, with no irony at all, after Patricia Hollins, my attorney. I was not spending those weeks being angry. I was spending them becoming someone who lived in her own life without apology. The next confrontation came on a Saturday morning. I heard the buzzer from the front door of the building, not my unit door. I looked at the intercom screen and saw my mother, my father, Diana, and Marcus standing at the building entrance. A family delegation. Rehearsed faces. The way Diana always managed to make group arrivals feel like an event. I pressed the speaker button. What do you need? My mother's voice crackled through the static. We want to talk, sweetheart. Can you let us up? Something in me was very calm. I pressed the button that unlocked the lobby door. Then I pressed record on my phone and slipped it into my pocket before they reached the 3rd floor. They filed into my entryway. Diana and Marcus hung back slightly. My mother looked around the apartment with an expression I couldn't entirely read, something between covetousness and sorrow. My father clasped his hands together the way he did when he'd been talked into something he wasn't entirely sure about. This is very nice, my mother said. Thank you, I said. What would you like to discuss? My father cleared his throat. We've been talking as a family, and we think the right thing, the thing that keeps everyone together, is for you and Diana to come to some kind of arrangement. She's your sister. Marcus is family. The kids. The kids are not relevant to a legal property dispute, I said. Diana stepped forward. It doesn't have to be a dispute. That's what we're saying. We're here to find a solution. I already told you my position. Your position isn't fair, Marcus said. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to me, and there was an edge in it that he hadn't bothered to sand down. You're sitting on a 2-bedroom alone while Diana's family of 4 is crammed into an apartment. Anyone with a conscience would what? I said. Would hand over something they worked for because someone else made financial choices that didn't pan out? I've been paying someone else's way since I was 22 years old. I helped with rent when Diana and Marcus first got together. I gave money for the car they said was an emergency. I helped cover the deposit on your current apartment 3 years ago, and neither of you ever mentioned paying it back. I have records of all of it. Silence. This home, I said, was built on everything I did not spend on other people's needs. That's not selfishness, that's survival. My mother started to say something about how that was a long time ago, about how families didn't keep score, about how— I have a question, I said. She stopped. If Diana and Marcus need more space, and the solution is for family to help family, then why haven't you offered them a room in your house? The silence was a different quality this time. You have a 3-bedroom home, I said. You've lived alone in it since I moved out. If the argument is that I have space I'm not using and they need space, then that argument applies to you first. So I'd like to know, are you offering them a room? Or is this offer only supposed to come from me? My father looked at the floor. My mother opened her mouth. Diana looked at neither of them. That's what I thought, I said. I want everyone to leave now. And I want to be very clear that this conversation has been recorded. If anyone attempts to access this property without my permission again, I will file charges and I will use every piece of documentation I have, including this recording, in any proceeding that follows. No one spoke. My father turned first. He didn't look at me as he moved toward the door, and I was old enough and tired enough to recognize that his silence wasn't agreement. It was the absence of a defense he couldn't build. My mother followed. Then Marcus, who said nothing. Diana was last. She stood for a moment in my doorway, and looked at me the way she had when we were children, and she was deciding whether a situation was winnable. She decided it wasn't. She left. I locked the door. I turned off the recording. I walked to the balcony and stood in the October air, looking down at the oak trees, whose leaves had gone gold and rust while I wasn't paying attention. I had shaken slightly during that conversation, not visibly, but in the way your body processes something your mind has already decided. The shaking passed. What replaced it was a sensation I had not felt cleanly in years, which was simply the absence of dread. The waiting for the next thing to arrive, the bracing, the quiet accommodation of other people's wants, in the hope that if I just gave a little more, they would finally be satisfied. That was gone. The weeks that followed were not drama-free, but they were manageable. My aunt stopped calling after I sent her a detailed timeline of events. A cousin who had been one of Diana's loudest supporters online went quiet after I shared the security camera footage with my mother, who I believed, despite everything, still had enough integrity left to be troubled by what she saw. I did not send the footage to hurt anyone. I sent it because truth, once documented, does its own work. You don't have to shout it. You just have to preserve it. Patricia Hollins filed a formal trespass warning on my behalf, which was served to Diana and Marcus through the correct legal channels. It was not a dramatic document. It was a precise one. It said, in clear language, that the property at Unit 304 on Maple Creek Road was solely owned by Claire Bennett, that any unauthorized entry would be treated as criminal trespass, and that documentation of prior unauthorized entry had been preserved and would be presented in any legal proceeding. Diana did not respond to it publicly. She deleted the Facebook post. 2 weeks later, I came home from a night shift to find a small envelope tucked under my door. I almost didn't open it, but inside was a card, the cheap kind from a drugstore, with flowers on the front, and inside it, in my mother's handwriting, was this: I watched the camera video. I understand more now than I did. I'm sorry I wasn't fair, that was all. She didn't apologize for everything. She didn't name what she'd done wrong, specifically. She didn't acknowledge the years of imbalance or the ways she had asked me, again and again, to give without considering the cost. But she had watched the footage and written the word sorry without being asked to. And, for my mother, that was a significant distance to travel. I set the card on my kitchen counter and made coffee, and stood at my window watching the parking lot fill up in the early morning light. I was not going to call Diana. I was not going to reach out to Marcus, or smooth things over with relatives who hadn't been honest with me. Some bridges, once you've seen clearly what they were built on, you let stay broken, not out of bitterness, out of self-respect. What I was going to do was live here. In this home I had built out of 6 years of invisible effort, in this city where I knew the roads and the hospital corridors and the best time to buy marked-down groceries on a Sunday evening. I was going to keep working and keep saving and keep living in a way that asked nothing of anyone and owed nothing to anyone and was answerable, finally, only to me. On a Sunday, 3 weeks after the trespass notice was served, I bought a small bistro table for my balcony and 2 chairs, and I sat outside in the afternoon with a book and a cup of tea, and the oak trees below had shed most of their leaves, and the courtyard was full of that clean, cold light that comes in late fall, when the sky goes very pale and everything is still. My downstairs neighbor, an older man named Frank who walked a very elderly beagle every morning, and always nodded when we passed each other, stopped below the balcony and looked up. "Settling in?" he said. "Yes," I said. Finally, he nodded like that made sense, like settling in was something that took its own time and couldn't be rushed. Then he and the beagle continued across the courtyard, and I turned back to my book, and the afternoon was quiet, and the home around me was exactly and entirely what I had made it, mine.